Hello everybody and welcome to this webinar on the IMI2 Hello everybody and welcome to the webinar on the IMI2 Call 9 topic on the next generation of electronic translational safety on NEXGETS. My name is Catherine Brett and I'm going to start today with a little introduction on GoToWebinar, and then my colleague Con Carroll, who is the scientific officer responsible for this topic, will give a brief introduction and some advice on how to put together an application. After that, Francois of Novartis will give a presentation on the call topic, and at the end there'll be plenty of time for questions and answers, and for that we also have on hand Thomas Steger-Hartmann of Bayer. So, how to use GoToWebinar? It's very simple. On the top right-hand corner of your screen, you should be able to see this panel. You can expand and minimize it. You can see the status of your microphone. You can make it go full screen, and you can attract our attention by raising your hand. You have two options for the audio. One, and probably the simplest one for most of you, is to listen over your computer speakers. If you have any problems there, obviously check that the speakers are actually switched on and not muted. And if that's still not working, then make sure you can do a sound check to make sure that GoToWebinar is picking up the right speakers. The other option is to listen in over your telephone. There you can dial the numbers, just dial the numbers given, and you should be able to listen in. If you have any problems, you can switch to your computer speakers, or you could try another number, and you can find other optional numbers under the additional numbers link there. For questions, which is probably the most important thing for most of you, the simplest option is to type your question into the questions panel and click send. Any questions sent in this way will be taken on a first-come, first-served basis at the end. If you want to ask a question over the phone, just click on the raise hand icon and we'll unmute and speak to it. So before we get started, first of all, a little disclaimer: IMI2 Call 9 has not yet been launched. We do expect to be able to launch it in the fairly near future, but we're just waiting for the governing board approval at the moment. As soon as it is launched, we'll publish all the information you need on the IMI website, so the call text plus all the manuals for submission, evaluation forms, proposal templates, everything you need, and I really would advise you to go to the website and download that information and read it carefully. We are recording this webinar and we'll be publishing it on the IMI website and YouTube channel. We will also publish the presentation slides, and we'll circulate a participant list so that you can network with each other. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Con Carroll for a little presentation on the way we work and give you some tips on how to put together a good proposal.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. As Catherine said, my name is Colm Carroll and I'm a scientific officer at the IMI, and I'm responsible for this topic, and will be responsible for the project when it launches. So just to introduce the scientific content of the webinar, what will actually be covered by Francois when he speaks. So you'll start off with the objectives of the project itself, what the real aims are, what it's trying to achieve. It's important that as IMI is a public-private partnership that you will be able to find out why the IMI mechanism is required to achieve the objectives of this topic. There will be a suggested structure for the project, and very importantly, and this is perhaps where you should really focus your attention, is on what you as applicants are expected to bring to such a project, and this will help you when you're coming to form your consortium and decide what expertises you need. And to complement that, of course, you'll need to know what contribution the industry partners will be bringing. And finally, there will be a description of the key deliverables, so you really understand what the project is about. One thing we will not cover here are the rules and procedures for IMI calls. And the reason for this is that there will be a separate webinar on the 25th of April, and you can see a link there which you can use to sign up for that. If you have any burning questions on these matters, of course, I will do my best to answer them during the Q&A session. So before the webinar itself goes into detail on the project, on the topic, I think it's important to understand how IMI topics are developed and how our evaluation procedure works. And although this slide looks a little bit complicated, if I go through it step by step, hopefully you'll understand. So if I start on the far left under the topic definition phase, this is where the idea for the topic has come from. And the way this works is that we have groups of different industry partners, so all the big pharma companies come together in regular meetings where they discuss their ideas about where collaborative research could really bring the field forward, and where perhaps a public-private project could really make a move to the future. And the result of these meetings and these kind of workshops is a topic text, which you will see the draft version on our website at the moment, and industry commitment about what the industry wants to bring to that, and what they want from the public partners as well, and very importantly, what the overall impact of this project would be. So that goes through a consultation with all the member states in Europe before being finalised, and as Catherine said, we're at our final step now, which is our governing board approval of this particular topic, and it will soon be launched as a call for proposals. And that is stage one. So the call for proposals under stage one is a stage where the industry consortium kind of sits to one side, and the publicly funded consortium begins to form. And this is where you, as applicants, have to identify the key expertises you need to address the call and to form a consortium to write your short proposal, which you will submit for evaluation. So there's a flavour there on the slide of the type of organisations involved. As I said, in the actual topic text itself, there is a section on the applicant consortium, and you should read that very carefully so you understand what type of expertise is required. I think this is a key step, is finding the right partner. So I think this is one area you should really focus on early. So following the submission deadline, there is a competitive evaluation. So your consortium will be evaluated against all the other consortia who have submitted. And only the successful consortium, only the top ranked, will go forward to the next stage, which is stage two. This is where the successful consortium merges with the existing industry consortium to form one single kind of project consortium, which then writes the real detailed work plan and really defines how the project will proceed for the next 5 years or so. Okay, so my message here for you is, begin early, find your consortium, and address everything you see in the topic text. So how do you apply? How do you submit your proposal? Unlike many of the other Horizon 2020 programs, we use our own proposal submission tool called Sophia. And you can see the web link there, sophia.imi.europa.eu. When you go in there, the first thing you'll have to do, if you're not already familiar with the tool, is request access, which is on the top right-hand corner. You click on this link and you enter your details. That will then give you a user, well, it's your email as your username, but it'll give you a password, which you then use to access the tool, and you follow the instructions there, and it is quite straightforward. Although it is straightforward to use the tool and it is no major difficulties, I would recommend you going in there to have a look as soon as possible, because some administrative detail is required, and it's the type of thing you'd want to enter early and not leave until the last minute, so you can focus your efforts then on putting together a really good short proposal. For the actual short proposal itself, I should let you know that we do have a new template. We have expanded the requirements of the short proposal somewhat. So there's a new template. It's very much based on the original template, so not much has changed, although now we also, as well as asking you about the excellence and impact of your ideas, we're also asking you to introduce how you would implement them. So it's not a full section implementation, it's kind of an abbreviated section. And also we've expanded an area where you can describe the participants of your consortia in a bit more detail. So this is not yet available. It will be available when the call launches, both on our website and the Sophia submission tool. But just to be aware, you will have to write a little bit more. And for this reason, we've also expanded the page limit to 30 pages. This template does have full instructions inside about what to fill in, so you will be guided through it. So coupled with the new template, we also have new evaluation criteria. And while I'm not going to go into the detail of the criteria themselves, you'll see them here on the screen and on the next slide, you should really recognize that it's very, very important that your proposal does address these criteria, because this is what the evaluators are going to use to assess your proposal in competition with the others. So when you're writing your proposal, you have to address all the issues that are raised in the call for proposals and make sure you're also targeting these evaluation criteria. And those criteria are excellence, impact, and quality and efficiency of implementation. I should note that there are thresholds for the first two, so the thresholds for excellence and impact are 3 out of a total of 5, so just be aware of that. So what is my advice for how to write a successful proposal? And this is based on a lot of experience in the IMI over the last few years of running several of these calls. The first thing to do is to make sure you do read all the call relevant material. So there's a draft copy of the NEXGETS description on our website at the moment. It will not change dramatically when it's launched as after the governing board procedure. However, I would recommend that you do read it again, and also please also read the call conditions just to make sure you fulfill those as well. As I said already, make sure you start to form your consortium early. So if you have not already done this, please really reach out now. And this is where you will make or break your consortium essentially, because as we only ever fund one consortium, it is not good enough to be on a very good consortium. You have to be on the best consortium, and therefore put a lot of effort into identifying your partners. I have a slide on partner search tools and networking later on. As mentioned, please make sure you do provide your reviewers with everything needed to address those evaluation criteria. They are instructed to only consider what is written in the short proposal itself. So therefore, it's very important that you do put everything in the proposal. Do not rely on your reputation or so on. Make sure it's in the proposal as well. I recommend that you finalize and submit your proposal early. We always, every time we have a call for proposals, we get last-minute emails and phone calls about people having trouble finalizing because they haven't, added a particular required item. So my recommendation: go into the Sophia tool early, fill out all the admin detail early. You can focus then on your scientific proposal. But even so, please finalize perhaps the day before, so there's no last-minute issues. And if you do have any problems, of course, please contact us at the Programme Office at info@imi.europa.eu. And you should only contact us and not the FPA topic writers at this stage. So a few common mistakes based on our experience. The first thing that happens after your proposal has been submitted is that it will undergo an admissibility and eligibility check. These are very, very basic criteria which you have to meet in order to go to the evaluation, but sometimes people do not meet these. One of them is that people just submit too late. If you submit too late, that's it, you've got no chance of going through, so make sure you submit on time. You also need to have at least 3 legal entities from 3 member states, so make sure you also meet those criteria as well. And these have to be independent legal entities, so make sure of that. Then when you go to the evaluation, why do some proposals succeed and some fail? Some people just do not address all the objectives of the topic, and if you don't do this, I'm afraid you're not going to go forward. So you can't just pick a certain segment that you think you're really good at and you can really address that. You have to address everything, and therefore you have to find other organizations who can perhaps address the other elements of the topic. Also, don't lose sight that we have 3 evaluation criteria. They're all worth 5 points, so they're equally weighted. And therefore, don't just focus on one. There's a temptation to focus on excellence, but don't lose sight that there's impact and implementation as well. So you have to pay attention to those too. And some very, very good applicants, they kind of lose sight that we're a public-private partnership, and therefore they don't allow space for the industry consortium to fit in their ideas. And the whole point here is that the consortium identified at this stage complements the existing industry consortium, so that the two working together can achieve more. And therefore, don't forget that there is an industry consortium there. It is described in the topic, and it will be described in the coming slides in any case, so make sure you leave space for them. And just my final slide then about how to find project partners. I think the key way is really to use your own networks. Network with your existing contacts. That may not be enough. You may have to reach out to other networks. It's really worthwhile, doing so. Even if your proposal doesn't succeed, you'll still have expanded your network and so on. So I really urge you to do that. As Catherine said, we will share the contact details of the other webinar participants where we've been allowed to. And obviously these people are interested in this particular topic, so they're ideal people to network with. There are various partner search tools which you can upload your details to and your expertise, and also use to search for others. I recommend you, I've got 3 examples here, I recommend you put your details in all 3. If you know of any others, obviously use those 2. You can contact your IMI States Representative Group person, who you should find in those links. Part of their job is to help their organizations within their country to apply for IMI calls. There's also a European Commission Health National Contact Points who have a similar role. And finally, of course, you can use social media, for example, the IMI LinkedIn group, to just show what expertise you have and to display your interest in the topic and so on. So that's my last slide. I will now hand over to Francois, who will introduce the topic itself. So Francois.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Colm, and good afternoon, everyone. I have a little bit of echo, so I don't know if you can put yourself on mute. That would be great. Anyway, so my name is Francois Pognan. I'm working at Novartis, and we prepared this proposal with Thomas Steger-Hartmann from Bayer. If we go to next slide. I will start with the objective of this project. It's a little bit of the take-home message as well. What we want to do is to build an infrastructure for preclinical and clinical data, safety and toxicological data, to be able to share this data between different partners. This preclinical data will also be under the CDISC-SEND format, which will be soon compulsory when we submit data to the FDA. So we want to take advantage of this already pre-made format. So these are the tools. For the objectives themselves, what is very important is this third bullet point. We want to do a very exhaustive and objective analysis of the preclinical data for the validity of human clinical data. So basically, we want to assess how the animal data, animal toxicological studies, are actually relevant and predictive of human safety issues. Along these lines, we want also to do a little bit around biomarkers, translational and reverse translational, so it's kind of data mining in those databases, where we would look at the translationality of biomarkers from animals to human and from human to animals. Once we have the databases established and functional, we want also to look into in silico predictive algorithms. Since we'll have all these very nice curated and organized data, it would be a shame not to go into predictive toxicology in silico. Next slide. So the pre-competitive nature landscape, there was a IMI2 consortium called ETOX, which was one of the very, very first IMI consortium, and pharma partners have gained a lot of experience through the ETOX, and we want to build a little bit on this knowledge. We have already extracted some preclinical data in this ETOX project, and we want to expand this. However, NEXGETS is not a ETOX number 2. It's different. As we are nice people as well, we would like to develop some kind of guidelines to actually share data that are not so easily shared between competitive pharmaceutical companies. We have done that in e-talks to a certain extent. We've been creative, but we think we can go further and perhaps develop guidelines that can be used not only in NEXGETS, but perhaps also in other IMI consortia, or perhaps even beyond this. Next slide. Okay, so why do we need to build a consortium? Why do we need to have the private people and the public people? So from the private side, we will provide the data. We have really a large amount of data being preclinical or clinical. Preclinically, we have archived reports, which is a real gold mine, which is underused. If we want to share those data between competitive companies, clearly we need a partner which is not a pharmaceutical company. We cannot imagine that Pfizer, Sanofi, or whomever will give their data to another pharmaceutical company. We need a neutral, honest broker. And so we need someone who is able to sit comfortable in this role of honest broker, and that will also create an environment that are safe for our data. And that, of course, we cannot have it within the FPA. Equally important, we need also people that are really skilled at IT. In data analysis, data handling, visualization of results from data mining, and also extremely important is the interfacing between the various databases. Since we will have pharmacology, preclinical toxicology, and human safety clinical data, which are using different languages that are organized in a different way and for different purposes, the interfacing between those databases, which is the keystone of this project, will be extremely important, and we already know that it will be quite difficult. So we need very skilled people in that matter. Also, still in the IT world, we need people that are able to handle large databases, complex databases that are used to human health records and can also develop in silico algorithms. So all of this is a combination of private and public, and to us it was quite evident that we needed this public-private collaboration. Next slide. Okay, what do we expect as an impact? We want to reuse those data and analyze them in depth. In e-talks, we have barely scratched the surface. There's still a lot to do. And if we manage to do this in-depth analysis, what we hope to do is to have a better comprehension of the overall toxicology issues, safety data. By doing so, we hope that the overall attrition rate will be improved. And the attrition rate is not necessarily having more compounds being successful, but it also comprises killing project very early. If we can detect relatively early on that a project bears too high level of toxicological hurdles, we can kill that quickly. That's also part of the impact. By doing this and refining the preclinical studies, if we manage to make the correlation with the human safety and therefore understand what is relevant to human safety, we can certainly reshape the way we do or we run the animal studies, and that can have potentially a very large impact on the 3 R's. Refine, reduce, and replace. This is for the animal replacement initiative. Last, but extremely important, our ambition is to make NEXGETS the world standard in a way of preclinical and clinical data together, analysis, data mining, and predictive toxicology. So we are very ambitious, and we know that the endeavor is large and difficult, and that's again why we need this IMI consortium. Next slide. Okay. The way we want that to work is relatively classical. We would have an executive committee with the leader and co-leader of this call, which is nominally here Thomas Steger from Bayer and myself from Novartis, with the leader of the academic side and a representative of the project management institution. This is extremely important. The project manager has a key role here. We've learned that in the previous experience that we had. The project manager needs to be a very proficient project manager, but also understand the business that we're talking about and that we're dealing with. And that's part of the executive committee, the EXCOM. For the work packages themselves, we will need representatives and leaders from both sides, from the pharmaceutical side and from the academic side, and with eventual deputies. The number of work package leaders can vary from one work package to the next, depending on the importance of the work package. Some are obviously much more important than others. Otherwise, we propose to have twice a year a face-to-face full consortium meeting, where all the issues are discussed, where the strategy is also discussed, where the progresses are reported, and where we can eventually vote on actions when necessary. Next slide. So what we need from the academic applicants, academic SMEs, etc. So as I already stressed out, the honest broker is an important one. We need somebody who is used to this kind of activity, that can also safeguard our data so that they are not hacked. I mean, some of those data will be confidential, and therefore we can feel only comfortable to share them within the consortium if we know they are safely in a database. Okay. We want people that are able to handle such databases, to construct them, to bring them together with complex access from various parts of the consortium, be it on the academic side or the EFPA side. So someone, an institution that can really build databases that are fast, that are flexible, and that most of the participants can use without too many difficulties. We need people that can provide expertise in IT tools, particularly the visualization part, which is pretty difficult with this complex data, and also being able to provide tools to get a good output format. When we do data mining, we need to have the data coming back in an understandable way and usable way. Since these databases will be relatively large with a lot of various data, we need also people that can do kind of statistical analysis in there, not just the data mining, but really bring great trends that can be found, hopefully. We need also people that do understand the issues that we have in the pharmaceutical industry in terms of safety, in terms of human safety, clinical trials, but also preclinical animal data. And that can understand also the importance to make the link between those two. And the last bullet point is also important. Since we want to do in silico predictive algorithms, we need people that can do this, that are fluent with this kind of approach. The in silico models can be of various natures, and we don't have preconceived ideas on how they should be built, but clearly there are several possibilities to build these, and we would like to have people that can really think in different directions here. Next slide. So what do we bring? Clearly the data, right? The data that already exists, that we will carry on extracting from our archives, but also the already formatted and structured SEND formatted data. As I said, the legacy preclinical reports will be a large part. There are a number of types of reports that we need to dig into. There is not just the preclinical tox per se, but also safety pharmacology, reproductive toxicology, etc. We will, of course, bring our expertise in terms of toxicological and clinical safety, which is a very specific world around drugs, new drugs, or compounds that will become drugs. We provide some access to clinical data that are not otherwise available. Of course, we bring an input in the project management, the overall strategy, the overall direction, where we want to go, what we want to achieve. We also bring our experience of business, of the pharmaceutical business, and we will also contribute to the data curation, data validation, and the IT in silico predictive algorithms validation as well, since we have data that will allow the validation of those algorithms. Next slide. That's a good, very good slide. What is it for you? From an academic point of view, I suppose that the public funding is a very important one and an obvious one. But beyond that, and to make a good use of this public funding, we will be binding data that are not otherwise available anywhere in the public domain. So that allows academics to have very high quality, good quality GLP data that they can mine and use, but also have a close collaboration with the pharmaceutical people, and particularly for the SMEs, it's true that you can be close to potential customers. Funding is the same, contribution to databases and data is the same, and you'll be close to us. Also, for the SENS and visualization tools, even if this is part of the consortium, there's usually, by experience, we know that from eTalks, that there is a great learning from this collaboration, this kind of collaboration. Next slide, please. The key deliverables, that's a little more in detail what I started with, which are the objectives. So we want to do this guidance of best practice, which is a relatively small activity, but an important one. We want to expand the preclinical data and incorporate the SEND formatted data with the pharmacological information on the compounds when it is okay to make them as non-confidential. The automated extraction tool for the study report, including the expert conclusion, which is not part of the SEND format. We want to add this because we think it brings a huge value to the database to have the actual expert interpretation of the data. Right. So this is pretty important for us. This is one of the key points that we want to have already, the interpretation of the data that we put in the database. Another very, very important deliverable for this project is probably the keystone, actually, which is the ability to produce this interface between the preclinical and clinical databases. Since these are very different in shape and format, that's where we probably foresee the most difficulties. Another deliverable which is important, which is the tools to actually mine those data that we'll gather together. And this is pretty important because depending on those tools, it will be more or less easy to do those interfaces and to withdraw conclusions to analyze the whole data, the whole data set. The last bullet point here on this first slide is the tools for displaying and visualization of the data that you have been mining in this. This is also important and difficult since we usually get back from a data mining a large set of data. It is pretty difficult to apprehend if it's in terms of table, for example, and sometimes we really need something which is more visual to have a higher level grasp of what is back from the mining. The next slide, which is the continuation of the key deliverables. Thank you. We want also to have those tools for the similarity searches. That is, when we have a compound in mind, we want to be able to do similarity search on the chemical structure and bring back eventually also data that are matching what we already know about this compound. We want also these predictive in silico algorithms. I will not get into detail here, but it's pretty obvious that what we want is not just to predict rat or dog toxicity, but also human toxicity. And then we want to have those tools that are able to do more or less automatically the correlation between the two types of data, animal and human, as well as having, maybe tailored tools to dig into potential biomarkers. Next slide. And just for you to have an idea of who is already part of this consortium from the pharmaceutical side, I want to show you this just to show that it's large companies mostly, and very serious companies, so companies that do believe in what we try to do. So we have AbbVie, AstraZeneca, Bayer, Boehringer Ingelheim, Johnson & Johnson, the German Merck, Novartis, Roche, Sanofi, Takeda. And we still have some companies that are still thinking, but most likely to join, that I wrote here. Okay, next slide, and I think I'll stop with this slide here to keep time for questions. So this is really the take-home message here. So we have 3 objectives. Do analysis of animal and human data. Do data mining for biomarkers, and predict animal toxicity. To do this, we have 4 deliverables, 4 main deliverables that we have identified. It's to gather the data, preclinical data, the one that already exists, the historical in our archives, and the prospective data of studies that are not existing yet from all those participating companies. We need the mining and visualization tools for the analysis, the in silico algorithms, and the biomarkers, the translation between reverse and forwards biomarkers. The impact, the high impact, is that the preclinical studies could eventually be adapted to human safety. And what I mean by this is that this consortium, this call, this proposal, bears the potential to actually change the way we will run preclinical studies, to adapt them properly to the human safety. And by doing so, we may have multiple impacts: reduce the attrition rate, shorten the cycle to reach the patients, and have an impact on the 3 R's. And in this little box here, you have what each partner is bringing. And I would just finish by drawing your attention that the middle line is both industry and public. That's where we can both provide from both sides, since data can also be coming from the public domain. We know that some clinical trials are publicly available. There are some national health insurance systems data that are also available that can come through the academic partners. And with this, I'll stop here, and with Thomas, we'll be very happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Francois. So I'm just going to unmute Thomas so he can answer any questions as well. You can see on the screen there the IMI general email address. So if you come up with any questions after the end of the webinar, please send them to this address. Don't send them to the topic writers, even if you know them. Avoid any questions of conflict of interest. So in terms of asking questions, as I mentioned earlier, you have 2 options. You can type your question into the question panel and click send. And we already have a few questions sent in through that way. And if you want to ask your question over the phone, then just click on the raise hand icon. So the first question is from Michael Graziano. How early in development will companies be expected to share their data?
A lot of freedom is left to the pharmaceutical companies. We define what we want to share and how early we want to go. Usually, what we intend to do is to go for the GLP studies, because they are high quality, they are quality checked, and data are usually trustable. So we start usually from 4-week studies, but if you have GLP studies that are 2 weeks, we can also put them in there. and then it's really up to the companies to decide what goes into the database. But of course, the more we put in, the better, since we want to do a very exhaustive analysis. I hope that replies to the question.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Michael Graziano. Is there an ongoing collaboration with the clinical IMI project to enable connection with clinical data?
Not yet, but that's something that we want to do. Yes, absolutely. The IMI consortia used to work together a lot. We go through memorandum of understanding, and once that is set, we can share a lot of things. We can even work together. It has happened before, and it will happen again.
Okay.
Thomas, do you want to complete this?
Essentially, a question back to Mike. Which one do you have in mind? So what is currently intended is certainly to draw from the European Health Records project, which was not an IMI but an EU project. So the electronic health records will be in the scope of NEXGETS. But do you have some specific project in mind?
Okay, so Michael, maybe you can write back to us and let us know if you have any thoughts there. Another question from Michael and also from Philippe Marc, a related question. What is going to happen to all the eTox data, and is NEXGETS going to reuse data collected during the eTox project?
Okay, this is a very important question, a central one for us. eTox and NEXGETS are two different consortia. However, there are a number of pharmaceutical companies that are participating to both, including Bayer and Novartis, for example. What we intend to do, as soon as NEXGETS will exist as a consortium, is to discuss with eTox and hopefully agree that we will be able to reuse the data that are already extracted.
Okay. Just to come back
for those
to
companies who are in both projects, it shouldn't be a problem. So Bayer would immediately do so. We are aiming for that.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
Michael Graziano has just written back here for the question on the clinical projects. He didn't have any particular projects in mind, he said, so that's cleared that one up. Another question from Philippe Marc. Do you plan to have regulators or regulatory agencies like the EMA or FDA on board?
Yes and no. It's difficult to have them as full members, but what we want to do is to have a scientific advisory board where we would have, hopefully, a representative from the FDA, from EMA, but also from PMDA, from the Japanese authorities, since we have one or two Japanese partners. But as full members, no, because it's difficult.
Okay. Thank you. Michael Graziano also asks, will the slides be available? Yes, they will be, and so will the recording of the webinar. Both of those will be published, as we mentioned at the start. Another question from Philippe Marc. What is the duration of the project?
5 years.
5 years. Okay. And also another question also from Philippe. Are you planning any synergies with the IMI projects, eTrix or OpenFacts?
Yes, and perhaps Thomas, do you want to reply to this one?
With regard to OpenFacts, we are already exploring a connection in the current eTox project, and since OpenFacts will go into a foundation, there will most probably be some kind of memorandum of understanding. So yes, for eTox, for eTrix, it's less clear to me. Honestly, I have to say we currently have no ongoing contacts, but it can be explored.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any more questions for the moment, so if anyone else wants to ask something, I suggest you type rapidly. Meanwhile, as I said earlier, we will be publishing the slides and the webinar online, and as soon as the call is launched, you'll have all the detailed information you need to apply. And I really would advise you to read that material thoroughly. If you have general questions about our rules and procedures and how things work, we do have a webinar just on that, which I believe is next Monday. You can sign up to that on the same page that you signed up to this webinar. And if you really are unsure about anything, I would advise you to sign up to that. As Cole mentioned, there are some changes in some things this time round. So even if you're an experienced IMI applicant, it could well be worth you coming along to that webinar. I don't see any more questions for the moment, so I will say thank you very much to Francois and to Thomas for their presentation and for answering the questions. Thank you to Colm as well, and I wish you all very good luck with your applications. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.